काम भी बताइए।
पहले जरा आप मुस्कुराइए।
आप यहाँ आए किस लिए?
आज आपने बुलाया इसलिए।
आए हैं तो काम भी बताइए।
ना ना पहले जरा आप मुस्कुराइए।
मुस्कुराने की न कोई बात है।
आज देखिए तो क्या हसीन रात है।
ओहो काम तो बताइए बताइए।
ना 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 पहले जरा आप मुस्कुराइए।
हाय
आप यहाँ आए किस लिए?
अरे आपने बुलाया इसलिए।
आए हैं तो काम भी बताइए।
पहले जरा आप मुस्कुराइए।
मैंने कहा काम तो बताइए।
काम?
हाँ।
काम सीधा सादा है, लेना एक वादा है।
अच्छा
प्यार तो निभाओगे?
निभाऊंगा।
भूल तो ना जाओगे?
ना भूलूंगा।
डोली लेके आओगे?
आऊंगा।
शादी भी रचाओगे?
रचाऊंगा।
सिनेमा दिखाओगे?
दिखाऊंगा।
खाना भी पकाओगे?
पकाऊंगा।
बच्चे भी खिलाओगे?
खिलाऊंगा।
रोज ना सताओगे?
कभी नहीं।
फिर तो हम तुम्हारे हैं।
वेरी गुड।
तेरे ही सहारे हैं।
जॉली गुड।
दिल भी तुम्हारा है।
क्या कहने हैं?
हम भी तुम्हारे हैं।
वाह 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 वाह।
हम भी तुम्हारे हैं।
वाह वाह वाह।
हम भी तुम्हारे हैं।
आप यहाँ आए किस लिए?
आपने बुलाया इसलिए।
आए हैं तो काम भी बताइए।
पहले जरा आप मुस्कुराइए।
हाँ पहले जरा आप मुस्कुराइए। पहले जरा आप मुस्कुराइए।
पहले जरा आप मुस्कुराइए।
Yeah, that's done.
Shall I start, Masuma?
Yes, Paranjoy, you can go ahead.
Okay, okay. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I don't know which part of the world you have joined us from. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with us on behalf of Masuma, Fiza, all of Paddy's, Padmanand Jha's friends, relatives. It's my honor, it's my privilege to be here with you. Yes, the occasion is sad, but this is also an occasion to celebrate the life of a remarkable person. I was honored to be his colleague for 4 years. I would meet him almost each and every day. So it was truly my honor and my privilege that from towards the end of 1991 till the end of 1994 and early 1995, Padmanand Jha and I, we were in the same office in Bahadur Shah Zafar Marg in the Pioneer. I worked with him very closely. I knew him, and then we lost touch, and then he joined Outlook. He was with NDTV. And then I heard about the terrible accident. I met him several times after that. When Padmanand or Paddy was working in New Delhi television, he would just drop in out of the blue. That was the kind of person he was. He would surprise you. So he was, like he is to all of you present over here, a friend, a comrade, a co-worker, a partner. a person who led a remarkable life, a person who understood not just politics, not just the complex world of politics in India, but a person who was understood human beings. He could connect with people, ordinary people. I heard Masuma telling me how at airports he would suddenly start singing. And before you knew it, a group of people had gathered around him listening to his songs. And what you heard was just one of his favorite songs. And even when many of his other faculties were not at his best, he was able to sing. He was able to sing spontaneously. जोर से गला फाड़ के वो गाना गाते थे, and he was truly, he loved music as much as he loved to understand. He was a student of politics and a student of life in this country. So we have with us here a large number of his friends and colleagues and family members who will be speaking. I'll just give you our 9 names. These are the names that Masuma gave me, and a rough order in which I will be asking them to speak. We have Rajdeep Sardesai, then we have Charu Soni, we have Yuvraj Himere. He's joining us from Kathmandu. We have his school friend Sanjay Chaudhary. We have Masuma's brother-in-law Hemant Adarkar. We have his former colleague Ajit Pillai, journalist, novelist. We have Padmanand's brother-in-law, Harsh Chaji. We have his daughter, Fiza. We have Masuma, of course. So I will request Rajdeep to begin and speak. And I'm sure there will be, after these 9 people have spoken, there would be several here who would like to say more than a few words. Though, yes, the time limit that was given was 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. But no, there is no firm time limit. You can feel free to speak. If some of you want to speak, you can just mention your mention your name in the chat box, please. And as Fiza has said, if you are not speaking, if you can put the audio on mute, so that we reduce the ambient sound. I can hear birds chirping. That's very nice. Must be the birds in Goa. I know that Padmanand's sister Mridula ji would also like to speak. Sure, we will definitely have everybody speak. And we are recording this meeting, so there could be several among you, several who are not being able to be here today, but this would be available on YouTube in the near future, and those who are not here with us today, they can surely get to hear what all of you are saying. So Rajdeep, may I start with by asking you to speak, and I don't know where you are. Are you in Goa? Because
I'm at an airport in Bombay.
Okay, Rajdeep, please go on. Please speak.
Thank you very much, Paranjoy. Let me at the outset say that, as you rightly said, this is at one level a sad occasion, but also an occasion to celebrate the life of a truly wonderful person. And someone who, interestingly, before I got to know him, and I must be honest about it, I knew Masuma much better. And in many ways, I perhaps know Masuma much better because Masuma and I went to the same college. And I still remember an early story in the Times of India in Bombay, which Masuma, in a way, shared with me. And it had a huge impact about a Bori school at the time, which she was investigating in some way. And Masuma had this great spirit. She was an extremely courageous woman. She still is. But I still remember Masuma was way ahead of most of us when it came to speaking truth to power, when it came to taking up issues which others would not touch. So I think that spirit of Masuma is something that I want to celebrate also today. So while we celebrate Padmanand, I don't think we can celebrate Paddy without speaking about the remarkable woman that Masuma is. So Masuma, to you at the very outset, my deep condolences to Fiza and the family. And your courage, in a sense, is exemplary for all of us. I met Paddy for the first time when I moved to Delhi in '94. I think we met first in the press club, and his reputation had already, in a way, preceded him. I was this young political wannabe journalist from Mumbai who comes to Delhi and had heard of, had read Paddy's byline and was always excited at the idea of being in Delhi. And then when I heard that Paddy was joining NDTV, it was terrific because we were a group of young people. We needed someone who was far more experienced than us to guide us. Paddy had an initial short stint at NDTV, but I do remember him in a way. The first thing that struck me was his ready smile and his ability to work with young people. I think that is something that has always stood out for me, that here was someone who had already, in a way, cut his spurs in the profession, but never saw this upper-niche divide. He wanted to be surrounded, in fact, by younger people whom he could share his thoughts, his ideas with, and of course, his music with. In fact, I've worn a Kishore Kumar shirt, as it turns out today, because I think Paddy, in a way, would have liked to, sing a Kishore Kumar song, probably, and get us all sort of humming with him. He took me once to meet VP Singh. VP Singh was not keeping well at the time. And I remember meeting Dr. Singh, VP Singh, and I thought, VP Singh still had a future the way he was talking. It was only when Paddy came out of the room with me and tells me, don't believe everything he says. You don't have to trust politicians. And I thought that was a lesson, early lesson. Never take politicians at their face value. Always be skeptical about them. And Paddy had this unique ability to have his sources, but never get carried away by what they told him on face value. And I think it was the hallmark of that old style journalist who realized that there was a need to keep some kind of a distance between the politician and the journalist, a distance which sadly in the times in which we live has completely almost evaporated. So he represented, I think, a particular kind of journalist whose interest was so varied. You could speak to Paddy on so many things. He sort of, you could have the odd conversation on cricket, you could have a conversation on music, but of course, politics sort of was his calling. And I think he belonged to that great generation of 80s, 90s journalists who sort of soaked in politics in a very dramatic period of Mandal Mandir politics and always kept their idealism intact, kept their integrity intact. So for me, Paddy represents that generation. And when he did come back and the Roys were very kind to, in a way, have him amongst us, his smile never left. Even post the accident, the smile never left. The first thing that always struck you when you met Paddy was that ready smile. Masuma herself has always been someone who, whenever I've met her, has always been also smiling. So I think it's a family trait. But it is remarkable that, the two of them made this sort of perfect, courageous couple. And I just think that what Paddy provided to journalism in those days was someone who you could trust to guide you when many others, perhaps of his, who had already been in the profession for years, may be reluctant to share information and knowledge with someone so young. So I want to remember Paddy from the good times. I will always remember Masuma from all the good times, and always the spirit that the two of them had. And I'm sure Fiza has it in ample quantity as well, is what will stay with me. We will miss him. And I think his life his life sort of symbolizes the ability to always remain undaunted by even adversity. So my remembrances to my friend Padmanand Jha, Paddy, and thank you for holding the hands of some of us, even in the sort of seemingly terrifying world of television, which he was new to also, but holding our hands and guiding us for all too brief a while. But thank you nevertheless. Thank you, Masuma, and Fiza, God bless.
Thank you so much, Rajdeep. Thank you very much for remembering that Padmanand, in that sense, was a journalist who knew politicians, who understood politicians, and yet always ensured that he kept his distance from them. They were, yes, they were politicians, they were important people. They had to be interviewed, they had to be asked questions. Those were days then didn't ask goody-goody questions, you asked tough questions, yes. And you were skeptical. You were always skeptical about what they said or what they they told you on the record or what they said off the record. And you respected what they said off the record because you wanted to maintain your relationship with them. At the same time, unlike many other people who are, very firmly identified with a political party or B political party, Padmanand always had his views. He was never apolitical. He had very, very definite views about politics. And as Rajdeep said, he had wide-ranging interests. And not just in politics, not just in music, in the world outside, in ordinary people, and in areas where, by his own admission, he was not that familiar with, like business. And I will recount an anecdote later on in this meeting as we go on. I see the Roys, both Dr. Pranoy Roy and Radhika Roy have joined us. So I also see Sumita Mehta. I have a story about Vinod Mehta and Padmanand too, which I'll tell you. But before I tell you my stories, I'm sure Charu here will have very, very interesting recollections of Padmanand. Please, Charu, over to you.
Thank you, Paranjoy. I in fact remember meeting Padmanand, I think for the first time with you in Press Club, from what I recollect. Of course, I was like what Rajdeep had earlier also mentioned, that Padmanand Jha was always very encouraging to younger people who were coming into journalism, myself included. And he was always ready to share his knowledge, unlike many other people that I have subsequently worked with. But for me, I would like to talk about the Padmanand Jha, the Paddy, after the accident. Because that's when I guess I became even more closer to him and to the family as such. They say a person is a man of character. We use this term. And Paddy was a man of character. And even though his body was brutalized by that unfortunate accident, he retained the character that he had. So for me, it was extremely moving whenever I went to visit Paddy and Masuma and Fiza and Jaws. It was extremely moving that the man's gentleness, the man's courage, his humility, that those things didn't disappear. So you had a situation where the mental faculties, of course, were not, there was this amnesia, this gap, but he didn't lack courage. He took his pain on his battered body with always with a smile. It was not only that he kind of very easily slipped into singing a song. He genuinely liked singing. And then also his gentleness. He rarely would lose temper. And that was like Paddy of old. So there was like seamless, the person was the same, but he had lost the ability to relate with the everyday political development. And yet, I remember, I think it was within a week of Akhlaq's murder, and I went to meet Paddy and Masuma, and we were talking about the incident. And Paddy just teared up. The humanity in him didn't die with the accident. He was not able to comprehend the full impact of what I was saying, and with Masuma we were discussing. But he teared up. That empathy you're born with. It's not something socialized, and that was for me. Paddy taught me so much how our innate character simply is there, and it doesn't change with accident. That is one. The second, I'd like to mention the way Masuma dealt with this unfortunate entire accident, and it upended her life. We all know, upside down. And I rarely saw an attendant at Masuma's house. So Paddy was very much an invalid, had to be taken care of. But it was all the family together were taking care of him. The entire schedule of the house, the morning to evening routine, it was as if Masuma had decided that Paddy is the center of her life's dignity. And that was especially very moving when we would go. Sometimes Masuma would call, come over for a drink. And I, who is always a lover of drink, would always land up. And Paddy was the guest of honor. And Paddy would be wearing a beautiful kurta. And the dignity bestowed on a human being who had lost his faculties and yet retained all those characteristics which we say that Paddy was a man of character. And that, for me, is one of the most important experiences in my life. And what to say of Paddy and Masuma's love? I think it's something really amazing. Thank you for having me in your life, and I feel blessed for being among you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Charu. Thank you. Thank you for those moving words of yours. Indeed, what Masuma has done for him is really truly amazing, truly amazing. I mean, it was a few months ago. Out of the blue, I kept saying, I want to talk to Paddy. I want to talk to Paddy. Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? And it took me several phone calls, and I called his former colleagues, people who knew him, people who at one point of time knew him, and none of them seemed to have Masuma's number. But I persisted. I kept trying here, there, everywhere. And I finally got through to him, and I was privileged. Then Masuma said, yes, on so-and-so day in the morning, that's when he's at his best, speak to him. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful. He was all there. And he said, when are you coming to Goa? Come to Goa. It's a great place. I said, sure, Paddy, great place. That I can tell you, if I come to Goa, I will definitely see you. Unfortunately, that was not to be. And Charu, you were absolutely right. And so is Rajdi. He was so generous. We journalists have this huge, ego that just because we are sort of mingling with the high and mighty, with the rich and the powerful, we are thinking like them. And there are very journalists who sort of treat their relationship with another human being, including politicians, including their sources, very, very possessively. Padmanand Jha was the opposite. He was generous to a fault, whether it be to his colleagues, to his youngsters. he would be so free in saying, this is how you contact A and B and C, this is a number, this is what you do. And that was truly a hallmark of his life that we celebrate today. And I'm sure that Yuvraj will have memories of Padmanand that he'd like to share with us. So over to you, Yuvraj. The weather is far better than where I am in the National Capital Region. You're in Kathmandu. Please, Yuvraj, please speak. Can we hear Yuvraj? Are you able to hear me? Yuvraj, are you able to hear me? I see Yuvraj. Please unmute yourself, Yuvraj. We can't hear you. Please unmute yourself. You are technologically challenged, Yuvraj bhai. Aapka screen.
Okay, can you hear me now? Hi, can you hear
We
me?
can. We can.
Now we can hear
We
you.
can.
Now we can hear you.
Yeah.
जरूर शुरू कीजिए युवराज जी.
I think he's again gone on mute.
I know. No. Oh, his screen is frozen, so maybe.
For Paddy.
Yeah.
Well, Paddy.
Yuvraj, we are not able to hear you at all. So shall we come back to you in a short while? Let's do that. And let me ask one of Padmanand's school friends, somebody who will surely tell us about what he was when he was in school. While we get Yuvraj, while we try and reconnect with Yuvraj, may I request Sanjay Chaudhary, Padmanand's old friend from school, to speak. Sanjay, can you hear me? Sanjay, can you hear me?
There you go. I think
There you
you can
go.
hear me now. Am I being heard?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Loud and clear.
Okay. You know, Padmanand was all kinds of things to many kind of people, as he had names. In school, initially, to his family, he was Nanji. First, he was Padmanand and then became Padma, right up to the time we finished our MA. And then suddenly he, transformed into Paddy, because all the media people I used to meet started calling him Paddy. He says, oh, ye to apna wala hai. So, and he was, and actually someone said that, what he was, Pranjay said what he was like in school. He was exactly the same in school as he was later in life. Very, very humane, very kind, intelligent, like sharp wit, always delivered with a smile, not malice, but could never resist a good turn of the phrase. Oh, he and us, we got into trouble a number of times because of his, he couldn't suppress his wit. School was, we were together from the age of 7. So I was in hostel and his home was 200 meters away. Naturally, it was much later in life. It became the adda for various reasons, from 9th standard onwards. But before that, we were very good friends. He was very respected for his intelligence, for his, sheer ability to grasp things and help his classmates and friends where studies and all were concerned. There were a number of people who relied on him before the exams, including me. Of course, then we separated for a while and he went to do his graduation in Ranchi and I went to Patna. We linked up again during our MA days in Delhi, and we were roommates. We couldn't afford individual rooms. So we were roommates, sleeping on the floor, and we had the time of our lives. He loved to cook, and he would, while we had a servant, but every weekend it was Padmanand would get into the act of cooking something or the other, which was, we had a whole gang come in from Jubilee and PG Mensa, friends from Ranchi and various places. And it was always a party. He was really a party animal. He would enjoy as much as us or the next guy, whether it was having a drink or anything else. But he was always the life of a party, because no party was complete without him belting out old Hindi songs. He wouldn't, he just couldn't resist it. So those were really good days. Padmanand was, it's very difficult to describe a person who who you know for the most of your life. I did know him. I knew of his professional achievements because people told me. I happened to be in PR, so I was on the opposite side of the table. And I would get, there were the interesting days when he joined Sanjay Ranchi and then he started working with Uttam on New Republic. Oh, it was a very exciting thing for us because we dreamt of, journalism was one of the things that was always considered by us that yes, this is something we'd love to do. And he was always there. He would very often, both of us would go across to my mama, Ashok Sahai and Hindustan Times for a free lunch, of course, in the cafeteria. We were put to work immediately, sub some coffee, and then you get lunch. And I think he got bitten then fully. And he went off. So he joined St. Xavier's. I think he joined Frank Brothers for a little while. Then he joined St. Xavier's Ranchi. Started working with Uttam on New Republic. I was in Jamshedpur at that time. I would hop into Ranchi for various work on a Friday. They would, it was very excited, and I learned the makings of a newspaper. And he was very excited to tell me, how this thing is created. Oh, it was very, very exciting. Then one fine day, he said, I'm going to Delhi. I said, that's the place for you. And he went to Delhi. And I think initially he was a stringer in Ranchi for Hindustan Times. And then I think he went and joined the Patriot. So, which was the normal thing. I think a lot of you guys who are here would have gone through the same route. I think later on it was Pioneer, Hindustan Times, etc. And we would meet every time I went to Delhi, or he would come down, we would meet often. I was posted in Patna, and one day I get a call that I think Rajdeep is here. Rajdeep was a cub reporter, as you call them then, and he said that, look, this is this guy who's he wants to meet Lalu. But Rajdeep didn't have a, kind of a station, so he needed so of course he came to my office, and he of course had already fixed up with Lalu to meet him. But he was like that. I'm sure, Padma, when you talk about helping juniors, that is what Padma was. He would help anyone who needed help, and it was not only professional help, whether it was with exams or it was with, their personal lives, because he was so understanding. He would understand immediately and had this huge empathy. And it was a huge thing, whether it was this little fellow who used to cook for us in Delhi and his home and what was happening at home. And naturally, he was very well loved. His accident was too much of a shock. It was just too much. I got to know, 6 months after it happened. It was silence, and I would hook up. immediately went to Delhi, went to see him in the hospital. That was a very big shock for me. But he saw me, and I was told that he was not recognizing, but you could make out that Paddy was recognizing your presence by his eyes crinkling and this very, very humorous glint in his eye. He didn't have to speak. He couldn't move. But that shine in his eye was enough to say that he was acknowledging my presence. I think that's where I have to raise my hat to Masuma for what she's done for him. But then again, I didn't expect anything less, because when Paddy described her and when they were about to get married, and he was wondering whether this is what is going to happen. Paddy was always, a romantic. And I don't mean in the, because he believed in an ideal world where everything was good. And if it was not, then he didn't keep quiet. He yelled and screamed. Many opportunities I have had when he has just risen up, whether it was in school or in later life, where he would not take injustice. So that was a huge thing. It was a huge thing. And I'm sure that is what, there were some of the things that Masuma also saw in him, and they linked up, which was the happiest thing for him to happen. Masuma, thank you very much. Thank you everyone who's here for saying all these things. I don't think I can carry on too much. Thank you for calling me here to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you, Sanjay, for remembering or recalling from the time you were at St. Xavier's, Ranchi. And
Hazaribagh.
Sorry, I stand corrected. St. Xavier's, Hazaribagh. Yes.
Correct.
My apologies. Okay, I see that Yuvraj is back with us, and I hope this time we'll be able to hear him clearly. Yuvraj, please start.
Yeah, it should work. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you well.
Okay. Thank you. It's very difficult to participate in a program which was beyond imagination. Paddy and I became friends much earlier, before we became colleagues in Outlook, where we worked together maybe 2.5 years. And it was. So his friends, including Uttam Sen Gupta, they all used to come to Patna UNI, where I began my career from. And they were people proud of Paddy, proud of the way he was struggling to establish himself. So in a way, I always thought I knew him when before I met him. Started reading him in Patriot. I was, so naturally there was, like his friends in Bihar. I was, in a sense, co-opted Bihari, who began his career in Patna, Khetri. And Paddy and we planned to work together at some stage.
It seems we've again lost
the connection. That's right.
Yes. We've lost Yuvraj. Yuvraj, hello, Yuvraj.
We could come together.
May I suggest, Yuvraj, we lost you in between.
Okay.
Shut off the video. Shut off the video. Maybe you'll get a better link.
Okay. Is it no?
Yeah, it's sounding okay. It's
okay.
right.
Okay.
Please go on.
So one good thing about our not having worked together most of the years was we could travel together. We could, share our ideas together. Then we can, and we became a very good friends. At times he will come to my house and say, okay, Nepali tum momo banao. I used to tell him, look, just because I'm from Nepal, not every Nepali knows how to, prepare momo and all that. Anyway, we tried. In fact, it was to feed Paddy that I learned how to prepare momo in Delhi. I never had tried that before. We lived almost in the same area, closer to South East earlier. Then we moved to Mayur in separate houses, frequent meeting. Although I was not a very frequent visitor to Press Club at that point of time, then, not only at a professional level, he was a great professional, trying to get details and in a very unbiased, in a sense, objective to the extent it is possible for any human being. We discussed about Paddy being apolitical. He was very political, but he was not affiliated. He was not working for any political party, or he was never, it never became part of his journalism to promote somebody or to denounce somebody, like deliberately. But he never compromised on the fact that came before him. That was the biggest quality of Paddy, my friend and my boss in Outlook. But he was never a boss in that sense again. We could take any kind of liberty, discuss in a free and frank manner. And only, so the other thing is, is when the Masuma, I think they met, I don't know for how long. Masuma, I had never met Masuma. I met Masuma when they were married in Delhi. So she'd come, apparently it was either winter or rainy season. We went Press Club in the evening, some evening. He was very disturbed, lost. I said, "Kya hua tumko?" Then he says, my friend had come. He mentioned Masuma's name. She'd come, and it was, since she's from Bombay, she felt, I think she was feeling cold in Delhi. It was perhaps raining or she was drenched. He gifted a sweater to her. I gave it to her, but I'm very worried. Maybe, like she falls sick, she's traveling. 2 hours, 3 hours we were together. Then he was mostly talking about Masuma and was concerned about her, like she was drenched, whether she felt ill and all that. That was, and Masuma and Paddy's relation was a different kind. So they married, became husband and wife. I left Delhi in 98. I met Paddy after the accident only 3 times. Once in his Noida house, maybe twice. Then in the NDTV office. But then, but he was always in my thoughts, always in my mind. Friends will tell me about him in Goa, in Delhi, but he was coping well. That within that frail body, Paddy has had tremendous spirit to cope with the hostile atmosphere. He had the will to live, and he lived. And Masuma was a life support for him. And in that sense, we are grateful that, Paddy was such a great, their husband and wife, but we were also grateful that, she was such a support to our friend who we always admired when we were together, even far away from there. I can, there are many memories when a promising life is cut short. Memories flood us, overtake us. We have to live with it. We miss you, Paddy, but then we are also happy that we met you. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuvraj. Thank you, Yuvraj, for
Thank you.
sharing your thoughts and telling us about recollecting Padmanand Jha for all of us. May I now request Hemant Adarkar, Masuma's brother-in-law, please speak. Tell us about Padmanand. And after that, I'm going to ask Ajit Pillai to speak. Hemant ji, over to you.
Thanks, Prananjay. I'm I'm introduced as Masuma's brother-in-law, but I just checked the Oxford English Dictionary, in remembrance of Paddy, because he was such a stickler for good language, so that whether co-brother is the apt word, and it is, as Shashi Tharoor says, that if you use a word, enough number of times, the Britishers have to accept it. So I'm Paddy's co-brother, okay, and it is sort of Cambridge Dictionary as well as Oxford English Dictionary accept that Indian usage. When I met Paddy first time, when Masuma introduced me to Paddy, they came to TIFR where I was a PhD student to meet me. What I was immediately sort of attracted was Paddy's political knowledge, Paddy's access to all the corridors of power, right? I mean, he would sort of for somebody who is meeting him for the first time, it would seem like, and especially we hailing from Bombay, would seem like he's dropping a lot of names. But when I stayed with them, and when I received calls of people like Arjun Singh or can say everybody put themselves on mute, please?
Please mute yourself, please. We are getting some feedback and some.
So when I myself received calls
Ranjit
from,
Bhushan.
when I myself received calls in their house from Arjun Singh and Ram Naresh Yadav, etc., etc. The list is endless. Is Padmanand at home? So that was the kind of reach. But apart from his political knowledge, which I think Rajdeep briefly mentioned, that he was interested in many aspects of life, and apart from being a great cook, we could actually discuss on history of Kashmir. We could discuss on various esoteric stuff which he was interested in, which a typical journalist doesn't sort of bother. It's like, so Paddy had that depth of which was a surprising thing to me, coming from an academic background. And something which I was taught as an academic student, which Paddy epitomized himself, is that a good professional must think clearly and speak clearly, right? And that is what is Paddy's greatness, that he always sort of wrote in simple language. He was always critical of people who wrote in bombastic language, especially journalists who wrote in bombastic language. And he said, in current affairs, at least I see to it that me and my juniors write very simple English so that it has to reach large number of people. It's in fact, just before his accident, everybody mentioned, speakers before me mentioned that he was a political, very political animal. But the whole point is, he wrote an article, How Not to Fight BJP, in 1995, just before his, couple of years before his accident. And this unfortunate accident happened. Masuma was in Mumbai, and I accompanied her to Delhi. And we were sort of, the ordeal that happened. And we realized that, Paddy requires enormous amount of, support. Initial support is provided by a lot of people, but, it's a long haul, the kind of injuries he suffered. And I must credit Masuma a lot, that she sort of took care of Paddy, in sort of, I mean, you might call it Indian wife, but there are, it's an enormous thing that she sort of over uh, last 25 or 24 odd years, she sort of took care of Paddy. And later, I also must thank Jocelyn, who came in and supported her. And same thing goes to Fiza. So all three of them took real care of Paddy. And if I want to remember Paddy, I would sort of salute him in his own words, because the language I mentioned, his music, his way of singing, has been mentioned by many of his colleagues. So he himself told me that I was known in school and college as master of English rhythm and style. And Paddy truly was a master of English rhythm and style. So with all my sort of love to Masuma and the family, and to his immediate family, that we all going to miss Paddy, but it's going to be remembering him through Kishore Kumar songs, especially Har Fikr Ko Dhuएं Mein Udata Chala Gaya. That kind of attitude. And Paddy will be missed, but we sort of are going to miss a very, very lovable person. Thanks, Prananjay.
Thank you so much, Hemant. And yes, thank you for correcting my vocabulary. Co-brother. Yes, many Indian, so-called Indian English words are now part of the English language in dictionaries, including loot and, of course, there are several others, preponed. All right. Ajit Pillai will have many, will I'm sure be telling us many aspects of Padmanand's professional life. And we were colleagues in the same organization for several years. And I just want to recall a small anecdote. As has been pointed out by several speakers, Padmanand knew things, knew certain, he understood politics. He was a great fan of old Hindi film songs, old Bollywood songs. But he had this amazing childlike curiosity of wanting to learn about what he didn't know. And and the fact that he was so generous in sharing his contacts, his sources, his acquaintances, and teaching and training an entire generation of people, journalists who were younger than him, how to go about doing their job. It became infectious, actually. I remember on one particular occasion, I was just after this Harshad Mehta scandal had broken out. And it was the headlines everywhere, biggest ever financial scandal in the history of India, etc., etc. And I managed to get an appointment with a particular gentleman who shall remain unnamed, but who was nevertheless a top official in the Ministry of Finance. And he says, look, I'll speak with you on the condition that you're not going to mention my name. So I said, yeah, sure. But I'm going to talk to you about this big, huge financial stock market scandal. And he said, yes, come. And he gave, and he said, like, come at so-and-so time. And Paddy said, I want to accompany you. I said, sure, Paddy, come. And there may have been many other journalists who would have said, no, why? I must ask him, I must seek his permission. I said, to hell with that, let's go. And we made it from Bahadur Shah Zafar Marg to this imposing colonial structure called North Block, the head of the Ministry of Finance. And we got our appointment with this very senior official. And he told us several things about the scandal. And the ground rules were very clear. Nowhere would we mention in whatever we wrote his name or his designation or whatever. And then we said, look, we've got a front page story. And I did most of the questioning. Padmanand asked one or two questions, and we took copious notes. And I came back and I said, and he was the first guy. He said, you have a page one story. So I said, how do we do it? He says, according to a highly placed source in the Ministry of Finance. And so here we were, I consulted him, he consulted me, we looked at our notes, we put together the story. It was all over the front page, thanks to Mr. Vinod Mehta, our boss, and Sumita, you were there at that time, I presume. So after a few days, something very unusual happened. Vinod Mehta called me and called Padmanand, and he said, look, see this letter. I've discovered that letter in my old papers. And it was a letter from a particular gentleman by name on his letterhead bearing that Ashoka pillar, saying, hello, on so-and-so day, your correspondent and his colleague came and met me in my office. And this is to inform you that I never said what has been attributed to a highly placed source in the Ministry of Finance. So I said, what's going on? And we've never named anybody. We just said highly placed source. Yes, we went and met this person, etc. So Vinod Mehta called us and showed us this, and he had a great laugh, and we didn't know what to say. So his letter was published in full with a one-line comment from Mr. Vinod Mehta, something to the effect that we do not know what this particular gentleman is talking about, something to that effect. So, and then Padmanand explained to me that, look, this is what happens. This is how the Intelligence Bureau worked. When our article appeared, they started looking at all the visitors who had come to North Block. In those days, it was relatively easy to go into North Block, but you still nevertheless had to put your name down. And this gentleman, maybe he was naive, maybe he thought it would happen, but finally the Intelligence Bureau came on top of him with a ton of bricks and said, look, you've spoken to these journalists. This is the time they came to you. The next day, all this stuff appears on the paper. It's attributed. So this was a very, very interesting anecdote in my professional life, which I will not forget. And I'm sure, Ajit Pillai, you'll have many more interesting anecdotes to share with us. Over to you, Ajit. Unmute yourself, please. Ajit was based in Mumbai and now he's in Delhi. When Padmanand and I were based in Delhi and Vinod Mehta had just started the Delhi edition of the Pioneer, Ajit was the man in Mumbai. Here we go, Ajit, over to you. No, we still can't hear you. We still can't hear you. Preeti, if you look at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, and there's a mute button, and if you just sort of press that mute button.
Can you
There
hear?
we are. Got you.
Yes, now. Yes, now we can.
Now we can hear you.
Now we can.
Go ahead, Ajit.
Yeah, I think I should rewind a little bit. And, in the late 80s, at a protest meeting for the Indian Post, which was being wound up by its then owners, the Raymond's Group, I met Paddy. And we started chatting. Then we went for a drink following the protest, and we got talking. And what struck me immediately was the fact that he wanted to know a lot about Bombay. He kept pushing me to speak about the political scenario there, about the Shiv Sena, the rise of the Shiv Sena, the communal situation. And he did not put on the airs of some of the journalists I had earlier met who come down from Delhi, and they think of the Bombay journalists as ill-informed, particularly when it comes to politics. But he was a man who was very curious. And yet, within minutes, I could realize that he knew quite a bit about what was happening at the center, at what was happening in Delhi. But he didn't just impose it on me. It came very naturally. And we became very good friends. We immediately became friends, and later that friendship developed. And he would often stay at our place. And there was a neighbor whose kid must have been 7 or 8 years. And she would come whenever Paddy uncle was in town. She would land up at her house, and they would, play Antakshari, and he would indulge her till late, till her mother would come and take her. So Paddy was there. He was very vibrant person, very lively, fun-loving, and yet he had a very serious strain within all that. He was not frivolous, but he was not a killjoy. He was fun. And soon we became colleagues in the Pioneer. And he was the chief of bureau, and I was in Bombay. And he was a great source of not only information, but also advice. I would always ring him up, approach him, and he would be able to tell me a lot about how to handle stories, for a Delhi audience, because Pioneer was a Delhi-based paper. And many of the things which sitting in Bombay you think is of national importance, Paddy would explain they were really not. And he would do that in a very, very gentle, not in an abrasive fashion. He would not be very dismissive. And yet he would tell you very clearly where you have you're on the wrong track, or how to correct yourself, or what are the kind of stories you should be looking at. And I would always use him as a sounding board before putting forward my ideas. And I could confide in him and tell him what are the problems, tell him what are the difficulties of the particular story. And I think I must confess that on one occasion when I had to go to Raigad to do a story after the bomb blast, and I was told by my office that there's no money for transport. And Paddy said, why don't you just team up with some local journalists, some of the Marathi or Gujarati journalists, and go to Raigad, pool your resources, and then go to Raigad if money is in short supply. And we did. And I got a hold of a friend from the Gujarati press. So Paddy had that, he always encouraged me to meet regional people working for the regional papers, who would also have their own, bring fresh insights to the table and to share ideas with them. So that was a great bit of learning, which I must credit to him, because most English journalists try to live in a little cocoon of Times of India and Indian Express, and just hang around in those circles and try to ferret out information and share information and keep the regional press out. But Paddy said, you must meet them, that you must have friends there. And of course, then when Masuma and Paddy got married, I think I was the lone guest, and he had rung me up. That was the day after our son was born. And he rung me up and said, "Aaj aana, nahi to main akela ho jaunga." So I had gone for that function. And but the other great aspect of his professional nature, and when it came to his profession, he did not let the personal interfere with his work. So we were the best of friends. We could be sitting and drinking. We could be having a very, very chilled out time at his house or at mine. But when it came to work, he was dead serious. And that was, again, a very remarkable quality of the man, that, he kept that division and yet it was not there. You could discuss anything with him, but fun was fun, work was work. That division was very sharp and it was very clear. And the remarkable thing was he did not have to spell it out. We all knew it. And people who worked with him, and a lot of people have talked about how we shared contacts. I mean, when I first came to join Outlook in Delhi, I had never worked out of Delhi, and I was a total novice. I didn't know much, but Paddy took me around. He took me to Rajesh Paidit's house. He took me to other leaders. He sent me to Jaipal Reddy. And all these leaders were rather friendly with me, became friends because of Paddy. But Paddy always told me, listen to them, come back, look at your notes, see what they are saying, how much of it can be put into copy, how much should be kept outside. It's another bit of small things like this, which are really very important in shaping a reporter's approach to work. And I found him very open with his contacts. He would give you phone numbers, he will connect you to people. When I first went to Kashmir, I was very nervous and I had reasons. Our correspondent there had been, had suffered bullet injuries while he went out reporting. And I was, frankly speaking, I was a little nervous and unsure of myself. But he said, you go on, you just, and he gave me numbers. He called up people. He organized a lot of contacts for me. He told me how to approach work in Kashmir. And I went there. And I dare say I did fairly good, decent stories. And that would not have happened had it not been for Paddy. Another little nugget, which I have also written about, but I thought I should mention it, was that during the Bombay riots, I had got hold of a receipt which was issued by Shiv Sainik to people living on Pedder Road. In which they had gone around collecting protection money. So a friend of mine said, look, I have got this. You can take the copy and use it if you wish. So we were all very, very excited about the story, and we said, yes, this is page 1 material. And I was fairly okay with it. I didn't know it was going to be played up rather prominently. And then Paddy rang me up and said, do you want your byline? And he realized that I was sitting all alone. I think I was operating for 3-4 days from the office without any staff, without going home, stuck in Nariman Point, high-rise. And he felt that such a story would put me in a spot that I might be targeted. So he rewrote the story, told me that Vinod and he felt that I must not take a byline, and that he rewrote it as a story emanating out of the Home Ministry in Delhi. And we carried the receipt, we carried the story, and that was it did have some level of impact, that story. So what I'm trying to say is that he need not have done all that, because as chief of bureau, for him to get a remarkable story out of Bombay with a byline would have been all right, all well. And if something happened to that person and the correspondent in Bombay, it's his business. But he did not. So he had a very caring nature. And that was, I think that remained with him. And, one of his classmates had talked about his Ranchi days, his school days, much after the accident, when we used to spend a lot of time together. There was one day when he was all alone with me at my place for a few hours. And then he asked me, "Tu Sanjay ko janta hai?" Very often he would just recollect his old days. And but he never became morose despite all the pain that came his way, despite all the problems he had to face. He remained extremely cheerful. And in that respect, in keeping him in good spirit, good cheer, I think a lot of credit goes to Masuma, who I think who always ensured that he was uh, looked after very well. He was kept in good cheer. And I would also like to point out the role that Pranoy Roy and Radhika Roy had post the accident. It is most unfortunate that Outlook itself, the Outlook management, washed its hands off Paddy after a few months. And there was this feeling among the management that now we have helped this much, that's enough. But I think that's where the Roys came in, NDTV came in, and they offered, not only offered support in that sense, but gave him employment and kept him on their rolls for several years. And that, I think, provided immense amount of relief to Masuma and to Fiza and everybody else in that household. And that kept them going. And I think that was a very great gesture on the part of the Roys to have come forward, stepped forward when others were trying to sort of wash their hands off Paddy. There are many other, our association, through our association, there have been many other instances which I won't instantly recall. I can't. But let me conclude by saying they were very good times. And I think whenever we remember Paddy, we must remember the man who gave so much to journalism, to his colleagues, who provided perspectives through which they could do their work better, and yet did not take much credit. He did not think that by helping you, he has a copyright on. He was a very warm-hearted, open person who said, okay, this is where you're wrong. This is how you should do. Why don't you think of it? And I think that is how I remember Paddy. And I think that memory will remain with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ajit. Thank you for reiterating Padmanand's generosity, his humility, and the fact that his uniqueness was in more ways than one remarkable. And just as Hemant had earlier pointed out, how he was very clear that unless you have clarity of thought, you will never be able to express yourself with clarity, that he was able to reach out to large numbers of people because of that amazing skill that he possessed. To be able to not just express himself with clarity and teach others how to express themselves with clarity, but that came from clarity of thought. And then he was also very clear. Facts are what they are. Opinion, that you can base your opinion on facts, great for you, but try and separate the two. Maybe many people consider that to be somewhat old-fashioned in today's day and age, where the social media has invaded our lives in ways which we could perhaps never have imagined. Be that as it may, and as Ajit pointed out, separating the personal from the professional, and the humility that we who speak, read, and write in English and consider ourselves to be the elite, that arrogance that we have little to learn from those in our fraternity who do not work in English. These are some things that Padmanand was very, very, very clear about. Both Ajit has been talking about it. I know they are part of this group. May I request Dr. Pranoy Roy and Radhika Roy, if they would, I know they've already told Masuma they wouldn't like to say anything, but if they would like to change their mind and say a few words, I'm sure we'll all be very happy and very, we'd look forward to listening to what you might have to say.
Please excuse us. It's too emotional and overwhelming. Please excuse us. Please forgive us.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Roy. Thank you, Dr. Roy. I will now request Padmanand's sister, Mridula ji, and her husband, Harsh ji, to speak. Harsh ji, please unmute yourself. Yes, we can now hear you very well.
I have unmuted myself. Thank you, Pranjoy. Mridula has just stepped out, so she would not be able to join now. But I am here. Very difficult to share thoughts in the midst of people who are from a different profession altogether compared to my profession. Most of you are from press fraternity and have a different way of looking at life. For you, Padmanand Jha was Paddy. For me, he was Nanji, and that is how we used to call him. And now I will switch over to Hindi to express myself slightly better. Some of you may have difficulty in understanding. Please forgive my indulgence.
नहीं बिल्कुल हर्ष जी आप हिंदी में बोलिए और अगर आप चाहेंगे मैं अनुवाद बाद में कर सकता हूँ अगर आपके अनुमति मिल गया
यदि वैसी आवश्यकता है तो मैं भी कर सकता हूँ
जरूर आप हिंदी में बात कीजिए जरूर हिंदी में बात
Yes, the point is many a time we see people as they appear to us in our day-to-day interaction, conversation. But some of their behavior, some of their conduct, some of their way of life is actually hidden behind their appearance. And Nanji, now if I convert into Hindi, because I think I will be able to express myself better in Hindi than in English, my limitation of language, is that Nand or Anand were synonymous. Nanji was Anand most of the time. And he was Anand not because he wanted himself to be Anand, but he was Anand because there was this sweet joy of giving. He had a tremendous sense of joy in giving, in sharing, which was spoken about by Ajit and by others also. He was quite generous. And in a way, he was trying to convert his pain, both physical and mental, which were enormous. Those of you who would have seen him at that time would understand the depth of that pain. But he had that curious capability of converting that pain into something which would spread joy, spread happiness amongst those who would interact with him. That was a will to live to the fullest extent, despite whatever may be the problem, despite whatever may be the challenges. And I thought that is what stands out so far Paddy or Nanji or Padmanand is concerned. This will to live and will to live in a manner which is full, it is not part. And that is how he would burst into songs the moment somebody would call up. The moment we'll call up, he will say, would you like to hear a song? And before you say yes, he is already on. Ask him, how are you? And his answer will be instantaneous. Maje mein hai. Now this maja was not a put-on maja. It was a maja that was being lived minute by minute, day by day, month by month. And that is so different about Nanji. I know that थोड़ा मुश्किल है शेयर करना. हम जानते हैं कि हम सबका जाना तय है. हम ये भी जानते हैं उसका तारीख और उसका तरीका ये भी तय है. फिर भी कभी कभी ऐसा होता है कि कोई हमारे बीच से उठ जाता है, हमारे बीच से चला जाता है उस आनंद यात्रा पर, तो हमें कहीं ना कहीं चोट लगती है और हम बड़े विचलित हो जाते हैं. नंद जी का जाना वैसा ही कुछ हमें विचलित कर गया, हमें डिस्टर्ब कर गया, दुखी कर गया. Because it was certainly a person who was full of life, he has disappeared. I would not like to share more, but I would like to conclude by saying कि जिस अनंत यात्रा पर नंद जी निकले हैं, हमें पूरा विश्वास है कि ईश्वर उन्हें अपने चरणों में जगह देंगे और उतनी ही खुशी, उतना ही प्यार, उतना ही स्नेह वो वहां भी बांट रहे होंगे जहां वो आज अभी होंगे. धन्यवाद.
धन्यवाद, धन्यवाद हर्षी. मृदुला जी कुछ, हर्षी, मृदुला जी वापस आ गए हैं, कुछ कहने चाहेंगे?
She has stepped out and she will not be able to join now.
अच्छा अच्छा अच्छा, कोई बात नहीं. I mean, before I ask Fiza and Masuma to speak, is there anybody here present among us? And there are several of you here. There are 69 participants, and there have been a little more on occasions, a little less on occasions. आप लोग के बीच अगर कोई कुछ कहने चाहेंगे, please just type your name out on that chat box, or there is also this hand you can show if you want to say something. Please feel free to speak about Padmanand, about Paddy, about friend. Yes, I see a hand up. Irfan Engineer ji, aap kuch कहने चाहेंगे? Please, I see at least one hand there, and I'm sure if there is anybody else after him, I'll be very happy to ask him. Irfan ji, please go ahead.
May I just make a suggestion? In the interest of time, do you think that I and my mom could speak, and then anyone who wants to speak could speak after us? Would that work?
This absolutely will work. Irfan ji?
Yes, I can speak after.
Okay, please. Okay, Fiza, please go
on. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. It's obviously a really hard thing for us to do, especially over Zoom. I was really keen that we did this in person in Delhi this weekend, but doing it this way is also ensured that a lot more people have been able to join us today. And I've written something, so I'm going to read it out. Nearly 2 weeks ago, we lit the pyre with my father's body in a crematorium in Mapsa in Goa. I like to think that his secular soul would have been grumbling at the fact that we performed a Hindu ritual. But in Goa, our new home, it turns out, there doesn't exist the option of an electric cremation. It was a strange fact that our family had suddenly come to learn on the day he abruptly left us. Even though Papa's health had always been precarious, I had never really processed the fact that he could ever leave us so soon. He was always around, diligently reading his newspaper, singing his songs, watching his old Hindi movies, laughing and chatting with everyone. He was the reason I knew lyrics of Hindi songs sung by people I've never heard of and movies I've never watched. The music was a background score to our lives with him. Whether it was a guest who came to visit, a nurse who tended to him at a hospital, an eager salesperson who knocked at our door hoping to get lucky, or more embarrassingly, a new boyfriend of mine who came home to dine with my parents. Papa would serenade anyone he could find. The special ones, however, would serenade him back. I would always roll my eyes and be like, Papa, please now, last song. But when I'd hear the songs playing on the radio or at a friend's house, I'd always beam with pride that I was sufficiently familiar with the music by virtue of being Paddy Jha's daughter. You know how some people are known to laugh off a difficult situation? Papa would sing it off. From the time I was a wee one to now, I was never allowed to feel the heaviness of life because there was always music uplifting ours. A lot of you know Papa as Paddy, the journalist, but he was also a proud Bihari, a proud Jha, and a proud father to my sister Nishita and I, who have both tried to follow his footsteps in our own ways. He was an unconventional father, but one I wouldn't trade for the world. And with this unconventional father, I had the privilege of having a special kind of parental unit. And I grew up seeing in an unconventional kind of love. Mama and Papa's romance had been full of its share of dramatic arcs back in the day, from what I hear. But growing up, for me, my mom and dad's love was about unflinching care, loyalty, support, and an unwavering commitment against all odds. Last week, we scattered his ashes where the river meets the sea from a boat arranged by Papa's old friend and fellow Bihari, Prashant, and his wife, Ragini. Throughout the boat ride, we played a selection of Papa's favorite songs, and Mama told us stories about each one. Which ones he used to sing to charm women, which ones she herself fell for. She remembered it like yesterday. My mom has never let me feel the burden of the weight she has carried all these years. She has never let me feel that things were ever getting hard or we were in any way missing anything in our lives. I grew up content and happy and loved. And I thank her so much for taking care of both him and I. It was also thanks to our ecosystem of support, of our loving family, friends, and especially Jocelyn, that we were able to enjoy a full life with Papa. I have so much of him in me. His features, his Jha teeth, his love for playing cards, his light sleeping habits, many of his food habits, his short temper, his knack for remembering names and faces, his habit of always crying along whenever someone on TV is crying. There are so many of his peculiarities that I carry with me, I have started to realize. But beyond this, I've been thinking about how to honor his memory in my everyday, and in what ways I can keep his legacy alive. And here's what I put down for now. I only hope to be able to leave half the mark through my professional career as he did. It still amazes me that almost 25 years post his accident, he is still so remembered and cherished as a journalist. I hope to imbibe even a fraction of his wit and charm. Till his very last days, he always had a quip or a wise adage up his sleeve, ready for any moment. I hope to always be respectful and curious about people. No matter what walk of life, Papa always treated each person he met with warmth and respect, shining a bright light on them for the time that he spent with them. I hope to be as jovial and loving and kind as him. And I hope to be as resilient as him and keep soldiering on, no matter how seemingly unsurmountable the adversity. As those who have remained close to our family post his accident know, or new friends that we have made since the accident may know, Papa never complained about things. He accepted life for what it was and lived it happily. The night before he left us, instead of good night, he said Alvida to our caretaker Ashwini. And while we've all gathered here today, we can too say Alvida Paddy, right back at him. Even though we hope in many ways he stays here right with us in his own way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Masuma.
I'm going to share something very personal with all of you. It was May 24th, 1997. Paddy had met with an accident. I was in Mumbai and I rushed to Delhi. As I entered the ICU of Kailash Hospital in Noida, my eyes peered to spot Paddy among all the other patients. I was not prepared for what I saw. Paddy was looking small, lay unconscious on a bed covered in white. There was a massive bandage around his head. It seemed like a zillion tubes and wires were running across his body, through his nose, his neck, his arms. He was barely visible. He was on a ventilator, the machine that was keeping him alive. It was a hit and run accident with a brain injury. He had had a subdural hematoma. A surgery had been performed at 4 a.m. and the blood clot had been removed from his brain. The next 48 hours were critical. Everything was at a standstill, except for the buzzing and beeping sounds of the machines. There was an eerie calm. Occasionally, the doctors would check his eyes and exclaim, "The pupils are dilated." They would poke him and pinch him. Most of the times, he didn't respond. Sometimes he would wince in pain. But there was hope. There was hope that after the initial 48 hours, he would come out of danger and things would go back to normal. The 48 hours soon turned to days and months and years. After 2 long months in the hospital, we took Paddy home. Paddy was alive. His heart was beating. Everything else had come to a standstill. Paddy had compromised lungs, he had severe chest congestion, and he had a constant fever for almost 2 months. He had no control over his urine. His body was a mess. Broken bones, deep wounds across his face, knees, shoulders. He could not move his limbs, his hands. He just lay still. All his fingers and toes were balled together in contraction. We had to physically pry them open and fix splints to keep them open. Speech, virtually all the motor movements, memory, it all just vanished. Memories which make us, that define who we are, were gone. When he started gaining consciousness, the first question the doctors would ask him was, "Who is she? What is her name?" The first time he answered, looked at me and said, "Rajesh Pilot." It was almost funny. I remember the first day a physiotherapist came home, a young 27-year-old. The look in his eyes said it all. The brain injury was on the left side, so the right side of his body was weak. So even though technically his left side was supposed to be the better side, it was not so. It was racked with physical injuries. His left arm was bent and would not open. There was a huge bone jutting out of the elbow. They called it calcification. His left leg was bent and had to be pulled open with force. And if you left it, it contracted back like a rubber band. His left knee was bad. A renowned orthopedic surgeon looked at his knee scans and told me that Paddy would never walk again. I cried myself to sleep that night. The good doctor's prognosis was never really good. I began to hate doctors because I knew that they were only going to give me bad news. I knew in my heart that I had to prove them wrong. And Paddy and I both did just that. I became his proxy therapist. I did physiotherapy, I did speech therapy, I nursed all his wounds. I taught him to read and write. Paddy was full of surprises. At the end of his very first speech therapy class, he beautifully sang, "Chhu kar mere man ko kiya tune kya ishara." The therapist was stunned. I used to give him these word exercises. A, write 5 words with A. B, write 5 words with B. The very first word that Paddy wrote with A was aphrodisiac. And this is an exercise which I continued through his life. In fact, just about 10 days before he passed, we were doing this again. and I gave him the alphabet Z, and the word he immediately gave was zealot. Every day brought with it new issues. Within the first month of Paddy coming home, he had a bed sore, a huge one, a deep crater exposing his bone. It was almost the size of a golf ball. There was no way this was going to heal by itself, given the fact that he was bedridden. He was taken back to hospital for a plastic surgery. Skin from his thigh was put on the bed sore. We kept going to the hospital several times, once to get his legs straightened out. Then there were epileptic seizures and he was back in the hospital on a ventilator. It was a dark time. I was in this rabbit hole with no light at the end of it. Every morning I would call up my dad. At the break of dawn, I would dial his number and wait for his calm, gentle voice, full of strength and assurance. My dad never gave me false hope, but he always told me that he was there. He asked me to stand strong. His words held me together. They gave me the push I needed to get up and do what I had to do. Paddy was a fighter. I think we made a great team. After 2 years of hard work, he began to take baby steps. He was walking tenuously, talking haltingly. He could read and write a few sentences at a time. The memory was slowly coming back. Then one day we had a divine intervention in the form of the Roys, Radhika and Pranoy Roy. I was working hard at normalizing her life with Paddy. I knew his mental and physical faculties were not fully there. I wanted him to meet more people, interact with his colleagues. So one day I took him to NDTV studios. Paddy had worked with NDTV before, Outlook. And in fact, he was scheduled to work with them on one of the election analysis programs. I still remember that day I drove Paddy into the NDTV office in my yellow Santro car. He could not walk properly. He needed help. I held his hand. We took the elevator to the first floor of Archana complex in Delhi's Greater Kailash. As we exited the elevator, me holding Paddy's hand and gently taking him inside, it seemed like all eyes were on us. Soon familiar faces came forward and offered to hold Paddy's hand. They greeted him, some hugged him, asked him about his health. There was this buzz in the office. Paddy has come. We were led to the Roy's cabin at the end of that floor. They were so warm and loving. I was marveling at this incredibly beautiful bunch of flowers in a vase in Radhika's room. In fact, smiling at them. And then just as we were discussing his health report, out of the blue, Radhika turned to me and said, "Why don't you send him to NDTV?" Just like that. I did not ask for anything. They just offered to have Paddy over at their studios. Paddy lived and breathed news before his accident. Being in that atmosphere could trigger his brain. And then just like that, she said, "We will look after Paddy. You do what you have to do." Paddy started going to the NDTV office. I started picking up the threads of my life, working and building my career and future. That was the beginning of our new life. We rose from the ashes like the phoenix, with lots of love and support from family, friends, the Roys. They all had our back. It was the simple warmth of their love and care which gave all of us the strength to survive this gracefully. I used to help Paddy bathe every day. In the last few years, I could visibly see him shrinking. It was a miracle how he carried on. His problems were multiplying, but his work for life was not waning any. He never complained. Till his last day, he remained the same smiling Paddy. He was not interested in what's happening in the BJP or the Congress. It didn't matter to him anymore. Life was simple for him. Everyone around him mattered. Mahesh, the Kudawala, the courier guy who came to deliver a parcel, the house help, the wheelchair attendant at an airport, strangers in the waiting room of a doctor's clinic were all touched by his warmth and the songs he sang for them. He made them feel special. Family members, friends were always in for a special treat of his songs. He would be in his element, regale them with songs and sayings. Kabir's dohas were his favorite. How he cherished every visit. He knew how to be happy in the simple things of life. A new t-shirt, a watch, a photo click, an eager audience for his songs. This is what he needed to be happy. Paddy loved his two daughters insanely and was so proud of them. He was a fighter. He also taught me to find happiness in small things. That is his legacy. I want to take this moment to thank all of you for loving, respecting, and keeping Paddy in your thoughts and prayers, even those of you who are not here. And I know there are many out there who love and respect Paddy, not just now, but throughout his life. Our life would not have been this way if it were not for the abundance of love and caring that we witnessed. Thank you.
Masuma, I don't think me or anybody else can say anything at this stage. There is Irfanji, you want to say something, you feel free. If there's anybody else who wants to say something, they should go ahead and speak. It's been very courageous of you, Masuma and Fiza. May you get more strength in the time to come. Is there anybody else who wants to speak? I don't see Irfanji.
I'm here.
You want to say something, Irfanji?
Just half a minute. Just want to pay my warm respects to him, how much I learned, how much he gave to me. Whenever I went to Delhi, I would visit their house. He would welcome me so warmly to his house. Always praises of whatever clothes I was wearing. They were not exactly very good, but he made me happy. He contributed a lot to my life, and he taught me a lot of things, how to be happy. I was an eager audience to all his songs, and just I wanted to pay my respects to him.
Thank you. Dhanyavad, Janab. Thank you very much for speaking. If there is anybody else who'd like to speak, yes, I can see Abhay Siddham ji. You want to say something, Abhay ji? We can't hear you. You'll have to unmute yourself, please.
Hello.
अजय आप अभी भी म्यूट पे हैं. You left. Yeah.
You can hear me now.
Yes, please. Thank you.
I can say just 2 lines. दोस्त दोस्त ना रहा, प्यार प्यार ना रहा, जिंदगी हमें तेरा एतबार ना रहा, एतबार ना रहा. Thank you.
Dhanyavad, Abhay ji. Thank you so much. If there's anybody else, I don't see anybody else wanting to speak. I've gone through. Yes, I have nothing more to say. I can, on behalf of all of us here, I wanted to just tell everybody here that Masuma, Fiza, and Nishta, they have a family of friends, each and every one of us here. Feel free to get in touch with us for nothing in particular, on everything in general. Padmanand's memory will be in us for as long as we live. And you, our family and friends, feel free to get in touch with all of us, with each and every one of us. Thank you very much. Namaskar, Adab. I feel honored and privileged to have been a part of this meeting. I thank Masuma, I thank Fiza for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much.